Hello and welcome aboard another episode of the Gallant Says podcast. It is very early in the morning on November 1st of 2024, and the Houston Texans just lost 21-13 to the New York Jets in Thursday Night Football. That score is so misleading. There's a whole lot of bad going on. Nothing worse than my Jon Snow wig, you would have thought, going into tonight's game. It's Thursday Night Football. Al Michaels is going to bitch and moan about everything. Oh no, this is something else. Let's talk about it. Hit it.
A radio show host in Seattle called Paul Gallant.
You are definitely living in the hindsight world today, Paul.
Do you feel there's been a consistent theme with the interceptions?
I think every interception really has a different story.
I was just kind of curious what Paul gets to see.
Are you kidding me? Paul Gallant, what the hell is wrong with you?
I'm really struggling to definitively say what the worst thing was in tonight's Houston Texans loss, because there was a lot of bad. We should probably start with the offensive line. If you were paying attention to D'Amico Ryan's press conferences this week, you'd have noticed that at about every single one, from the post-game press conference after the game against the Colts to the press conference on Monday and then Tuesday, he has consistently maintained a positive outlook. And you know what? I get it. Some people, that's how they roll. But all year long, have we not seen the same thing over and over with the offensive line? So tonight shouldn't have been surprising. Quinnen Williams is very good. The New York Jets have a very good defense. That said, this is surprising. 8 sacks allowed, 11 quarterback hits, 10 tackles for a loss. And Kenyon Green didn't even play the whole game. Kenyon Green didn't get benched. Kenyon Green got hurt. And for a moment, it felt like things got better because, I mean, that offensive line for the Houston Texans was doing to C.J. Stroud what my ex-girlfriend, Daenerys Targaryen, I'm dressed up like Jon Snow right now, did to half of King's Landing, setting them all on fire. That's bad. Illegal in some places. But when you're, I guess, the queen, not illegal. So Jon Snow, me, her loving boyfriend, had to stab her in the stomach. Can't really do that with the Texans offensive line right now, right? I mean, are you trading for somebody? No. At this point, it feels like they're being a little bit stubborn because you've known that this team can't do one thing on the offensive line, which is in pass protection. If a pass rush decides to throw a stunt, and for those who don't know what a stunt is, it's basically a way of going after the quarterback where defenders are not going straight at them. They're going around in a loop and things like that. Every single week it works. And the Jets have good defenders on a level that the Colts probably don't, and maybe more so than the Packers too. I mean, going into the year, the reason people liked the Jets as much as they did was because they know that the defense is good. They just were wondering if Aaron Rodgers was going to stay healthy for a full year. And guess what? That didn't happen. So the offensive line is where we start off. But, I mean, C.J. Stroud is starting to look bad. And he still has his highlight plays, and maybe it's Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator, who isn't able to create an offense where receivers get open. Or maybe it's the receivers not being talented. There's no Nico Collins. There's no Stephon Diggs now for the first time. But does he not look a little bit more nervous? He's running a lot, which is a byproduct of constantly being under siege. But 8 times for 59 yards. It's a nice number, but Stroud would probably tell you that he doesn't want to run that much. And then on top of that, look at the passing numbers. I mean, this looks a lot like the Texans made Josh Allen look and Anthony Richardson looked like. 11 of 30 for 191 yards. Much more Anthony Richardson because of the high yardage, despite the few completions. I'm sorry, I keep on having to pull the hair out of my really shitty wig out of my face. He is not looking as good as we have seen him look. He's starting to develop happy feet, and he's missing guys who are open. And that is pretty concerning. Let's read some comments here because we're trying to figure out what was the worst thing we saw today. On YouTube, Brandon Halam says, Slowick looked like an idiot. Easily winnable game. We'll get to that really weird 2nd and 7 play later. B. Hannon on twitch.tv/Gallant says, hello, friends. The Texans are frauds. Space City Ballers, meanwhile, on YouTube says, Kenyon Green is a fucking joke. If he's not benched against the Lions, we're done. That's the worst part about it. The Lions are up next, and for those who don't know, this is a real stat. The Lions have more touchdown passes than incompletions in their last 4 games. So we're talking something like 23 touchdowns to 18 total incompletions by Jared Goff. John Ryan comments on YouTube, I'm done for the year. Done. No more games for me. I mean, they are 6-3. They have been significantly more unwatchable. But right now, I'm wondering how they can put together a single playoff victory. With this offensive line, how the hell is that happening? I don't see it. Let's talk about the offense, the separation lacking. So the league average in terms of separation is 2.97 yards, and the only guy who was creating any was Tank Dell, and to a degree, Robert Woods. Tank Dell was 3.12. Robert Woods was 3.07. But Dalton Schultz, Xavier Hutchinson, Cade Stover, they weren't getting open enough. I guess John Mechie's not on this list, but they do not have the talent without Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. And it does sound like I'm making excuses for C.J. Stroud, but maybe a wide receiver is something they have to look at. I mean, this Jets defense really just stripped you naked, and you look like absolute shit. You got a muffin top. You look like you haven't bathed. It's not good. It's really not good right now. No manscaping if you do that. I don't know. Some people do. Some people don't. The offense, sticking with it as we continue to just go through the many bad things that happened in this game. What in the fuck was that 2nd and 7 Wildcat with Joe Mixon, where Joe Mixon lines up under center and just throws a pass to C.J. Stroud, who runs straight down the field. He got picked up by a defender that wasn't going anywhere. Maybe that's a play that you feel more comfortable with if Stephon Diggs is healthy, seeing as we saw Stephon Diggs run a play like that where he didn't throw the ball, he ran it in for a touchdown. But what was that call, just given the way that things were going for the Texans at that moment in time? It felt like it killed the momentum, and Bobby Slowick does this a lot, this cutesy bullshit that seems to be unnecessary. DeMeco Ryans was very defensive about that play after the game. I watched in his press conference, and okay, man, you have your guys back, and for the first time, it's not like, hey, let's talk about the positive. Instead, he's like, if that had worked, you would be complimenting us. But I don't know that we would, because it didn't seem like it was that well drawn up of a play. I don't see how C.J. Stroud was going to get open for that one, you know? Let's read some more comments here, because the offense stunk. And I really thought that the 14-play, 98-yard drive to take a 7-0 lead towards the end of the second quarter was going to open things up. The next drive, they get the ball back after the Jets offense really, which stunk in this game in the first half. They miss a field goal after Stroud gets sacked to make it a 56-yard attempt. And it killed a lot of momentum there, because it really felt like the 14-play, 98-yard drive was close to a backbreaker with how badly things looked for the Jets offense early. More comments. Solomon Grundy comments on X. Couldn't watch the game because fuck Bezos. Looked at the stats. Looks like I didn't miss anything. Do you not have Amazon Prime? Shout out to you if you have not basically become part of the Matrix or the future Matrix. But I don't know. I don't know how I lived without Amazon Prime before this, even if Bezos isn't maybe the best dude out there. There were some bad calls tonight. That's on D'Amico Ryans, says B. Hannon on Twitch. Space City Ballers comments, CJ is missing open throws this year he would have easily made last year. I agree with that. John Mechie had an open touchdown and CJ overthrew him. You're right. At this point, he's running from ghosts, and Slowick's Wildcat was idiotic. Yeah. Brandon Halam on YouTube comments, coaches know what they had here and what they were working with. They fucked this up. And continues saying he's only missing these open throws after getting obliterated for a couple of drives. Ask a boxer to throw a pass after getting hit for a few rounds, or a few games, or a few matches. You wonder how Rocky probably felt towards the end of his boxing career, right? With the very few times that he ever blocked. I mean, obviously, he wasn't thinking much because he had a lot of brain damage, and I'm sure that factored into his shitty relationship with his son and his relationship with his terrible wife, Adrian, who sucks. She tried to make a brain-dead imbecile stop boxing so that he could do what? And, I mean, he was too stupid to do anything else. Watch Rocky 2. And what's she going to do? Provide for the family while working at a fucking pet shop? Unbelievable storyline. Rocky probably could have gotten 2 to 3 more fights in there, and cemented his legacy even further. Anyway. Lots of bad for the Houston Texans. Let's go through some more of it. In the second half, 3 points at the Packers, 6 points against the Colts, 6 points against the Jets. They haven't scored a second half touchdown in 3 weeks. So they haven't scored one since the Patriots game. Jesus. Defensively, they did well in the first half. The Jets' possessions were punt, fumble, though, I mean, that fumble we'll talk about later. That should have been a touchdown. That guy, Malachi Corley, just a complete fucking moron on that play. We'll get to it in a moment. Punt. And then the second half, the Jets did whatever they wanted. 3 drives, all touchdowns. Pretty easy. The second half, this team does not know how to come out strong, how to do things differently. It always feels like the other team has an adjustment for them. If that's true, I don't know. Halftime adjustments are a little bit overrated because there really isn't that much time at halftime. It's 12 minutes. You're moving into the locker room for part of it. Then you're coming back out of the locker room, warming up again for the rest of it. But whatever's happening over the course of games, it does feel like the Texans just keep on doing a lot of the same, and these other teams evolve. And I don't know who you talk to about getting better at that. If you're D'Amico Ryans, who do you turn for wisdom from? And for Bobby Slowick, I would say the same thing. But right now, it does feel like the second half things just get very, very stale, and other teams just kick their ass. More things that were bad in this game. I'm trying to figure out what was the worst. Kaimi Fairbairn, this was a terrible game. This is the first time he's missed 2 field goals in a game since 2018, so 6 years ago, and one of them was from 27 yards. 27 yards, and he doinked it too. I understand him missing the 56-yard field goal. MetLife Stadium is a weird one. The wind and everything that's there makes it a little bit tough, but to miss the 27-yarder, the MetLife turf, I guess if we want to focus on something that's not just the Houston Texans, Jalen Petrie was down for a moment. Devontae Adams was down for a moment. Will Anderson was down for a moment. Kenyon Green was down, didn't come back into the game. I don't think Anderson ever came back in either. CJ Stroud went down for a moment. Laramie Tunsil went down for a moment. Shaq Mason went down for a moment. I felt like Sauce Gardner was down for a couple of moments, at least once, possibly twice. That field sucks. There was an article online that I read on today's radio show, and it was from November of 2023, and it talked about the many injuries that have suffered at NRG Stadium, most of them knee-related, but we're talking 17. Excuse me, yawning. Could have been having a good time tonight, celebrating my favorite holiday. Instead, here I am, talking about just another fucking Texans disaster in prime time. Where was I at? Who am I? What am I? What's this all about? What's the buzz? Tell me what's happening. What's the buzz? Tell me what's happening. Oh, this article talked about how there's been a lot of injuries, and it was in November. It was before the Texans played the Jets, and I know C.J. Stroud got hurt in that game. I think Nico Collins might have got hurt in that game too. Ugh. On YouTube, Nicholas Melcher says, CJ doesn't get a pass either. He missed some throws. O-line is trash like always. I agree. I totally agree. What else? The Jets tried to Jets this game away too. I think that's what makes it the worst. So, second drive of the game, they give you second life. A roughing the punter on drive 2. I mean, to that point, it was the Texans' best offensive play. They keep marching down the field. They get into the red zone, and Kenyon Green allows a sack, and C.J. Stroud fumbles, and the Jets recover it. They tried to give it to you there. They also tried when Malachi Corley, a Jets wide receiver on a reverse, has a free line to waltz into the end zone, and this stupid fuck drops the ball on the 1-inch line before he even crosses the goal line. How is this a thing? There are so many football players who have the ball in their hands who forget that you have to hold on to the football while going into the end zone. How fucking stupid are you? And I would tell this to anyone who did this face. I really would. In the immediacy afterwards. You know who got away with this, by the way? Joe Mixon got away with it at Oklahoma against Ohio State. We've also seen Deshaun Jackson do this a couple of times. How do you forget to bring the ball into the end zone? Is it cool to drop your phone, your keys, your wallet, anything? No, whenever you drop something, you look like a total dipshit. So why would you drop the football? And this is why I like that there's a penalty for fumbling the ball out of the end zone, that it's a touchback and the ball goes to the other team. You should never, ever fumble in a game. Ever. Not once. Fumbling is the one thing you can control as a ball carrier. I know this because we had drills to make sure that we never fumbled at high school football practice. We had to walk around essentially all practice long with a football in our hands, and coaches might come around trying to punch it out. If they punched it out, the whole team had to do up downs, and then the whole team would throw things at you as you ran a lap after practice. I fumbled, I think, twice. Never again after the second time. I told myself I'm never going to let it happen again. I would hold the ball with 2 hands. You should never fumble, but you also should carry the football into the fucking end zone. How do you forget to do that? I'm mad at Malachi Corley for Jets fans, and I don't like Jets fans, but that was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. Gave the Texans life. If that Malachi Corley touchdown stands, we're talking about a 28-13 game that never even felt as close as this one did. And this one really didn't feel that close once the Jets started moving the football at will. By the way, there was another second chance that the Jets gave you. I keep on saying the Texans. It's a Freudian slip. I want to say Jets going to Jets, but Texans going to Texan. There was a roughing the long snapper of John Weeks on a 4th and 22. It nullified a 43-yard field goal. So the Texans continue. They march down the field, and then Kaimi Fairbairn misses after that. And I think that was the same drive where they ran the Mixon cat, where Joe Mixon has the ball snapped to him, and he throws it to C.J. Stroud. What in the fuck is going on? It is so embarrassing what we saw today. An ugly-ass game. We embarrassed ourselves in front of Al Michaels, who was in his quintessential sarcastic final form in this one, disgusted with what he was watching, because everyone should have been disgusted with what they saw today. The game's over-under was 42. Didn't even come close to that. Malachi Corley's fumble, one of the more embarrassing things I think I've ever seen. 16 penalties for 143 yards in total. And while there were some good things like Joe Mixon, this is the whole offense. If you're the Texans, just turn the football over to Joe Mixon. Every single play. Maybe they should just run the Mixon cat since C.J. Stroud's starting to get nervous. Just direct snap at the Mixon and have him run upfield every single play. Because they can't pass protect and they can barely do run blocking. Tank Dell finally had a good game. He had 6 catches for 126 yards. Danico Autry had 2 sacks. So you saw some good things, but the injuries going forward now where it looks like Kenyon Green's out, you're going to need to find a left guard who's probably better than whatever Kendrick Green was doing out there, or whoever went in for him. Laramie Tunsil, is he banged up? How long's Will Anderson going to be out with that ankle injury? He's dealt with an ankle injury before. Look, you got a lot of injuries right now, and it kind of overshadows anything good that was done in this game. Really, most of the good was that Garrett Wilson touchdown catch. That was one of the best catches I've ever seen. One-handed. I did not know that a shin counts essentially as a body part, like a knee or an elbow or whatever, but one-handed catch in the back of the end zone. It was an insane catch, and it felt like in that moment right there, the Jets took this Texans' soul. Aaron Rodgers also had a pretty good connection with Devontae Adams in the second half. I thought he was concussed, but they were picking on Jalen Petrie. This game, it's 100% a reflection that confirms what just about every single person who is following the Texans feels, is that they're not a serious Super Bowl contender. They're sloppy, and there's a lot of things that, since they're taking such a long time to get cleaned up, stands to reason that they're never going to get cleaned up. So, yeah, I don't know what else to tell you. I'll read a couple more comments before I get out of here. Largo's talking about Joel Blank and his war against the Twitch on ESPN 97.5. B. Hannon says, the Jets were acting like they won the Super Bowl. Whatever, I'm going to let them have it. I mean, this was a Super Bowl kind of game for them. This for the Texans should have been. Should have been. Oh, Jesus. This should have been an easy win. And I mean, going into it, I didn't feel great about it. I don't think I picked the Jets to win, but I didn't feel great about it. And here we are. Brandon Hallam comments, huge disaster because we were supposed to watch NYC lose Monday Night Football, the World Series, and Thursday Night Football in the same week. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I'm out of energy. I'm tired. My Halloween's been ruined. I wanted to go out and be a creep. I mean, go out and meet new friends, strong, independent women and stuff. And here I am in a Jon Snow wig, which looks like shit, in a Jon Snow cape, which is hot as shit, slowly dying a little bit inside. I hope you had fun. I hope you had fun stopping by. If you didn't know already, you can get this wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify. You can also get this on YouTube at Paul Gallant, Twitch at Gallant Says, Facebook.com/Paul Gallant Sports, on Instagram at Sports Gallant, and on X at Gallant Says. Follow me on all of those things. Like this video. Subscribe. Every little bit of support for the Gallant Says podcast helps. Anyway, I'm hitting the sack. Fuck. This sucked. So long. Farewell. Have yourselves a wonderful Friday. Joe George and I will be back on the air at noon on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5 on YouTube.